The F-35 was supposed to be the superhero of the skies, a stealth fighter so advanced it could replace dozens of legacy aircraft across the Air Force, Navy, Marines, and even America's allies. One jet to rule them all. But somewhere between the drawing board and the battlefield, that dream started to fracture. Because behind the glossy PR videos and billion-dollar budgets, the truth is far more complicated. This so-called flying computer has been grounded by defects, plagued by cost overruns, and dogged by controversy for nearly 2 decades. And yet, the F-35 is still the most lethal, data-hungry, networked fighter ever to touch the sky. Imagine a jet that sees everything, talks to everyone, and can neutralize the enemy before they even know it's there. A stealthy Swiss Army knife that can strike deep, defend allies, and rewrite the rules of air warfare, all in one mission. And that's the paradox of the F-35. Is it a game changer with a glitchy legacy? A marvel of engineering, weighed down by politics, red tape, and unrealistic expectations. And here's the wild part. 19 countries have brought in, from Japan to Australia, Israel to Norway. Allies are betting their airpower futures on this single, very expensive platform. But what does that mean for the global balance of power? What happens when one jet becomes the glue holding together an entire allied coalition? And most of all, what's next? Because while the F-35 is just now reaching full combat readiness, a 6th generation replacement, the F-47, is already on the horizon. In this deep dive documentary, we're going to explore every angle of the F-35 Lightning, from its origins in the Joint Strike Fighter program to its brutal development timelines and now infamous delays. Along the way, we'll look at the ever-evolving upgrade roadmap, which includes Block 4 and beyond. We'll also consider the strategic implications of global F-35 deployments, and how this jet could either cement American air dominance or collapse under its own complexity. We'll break down the history, the specs, and the real-world performance you don't see in the highlight reels. So strap in and let's take a look, because what you think you know about the F-35 is just the beginning. PilotPhotog.com. The Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II is a 5th generation, single-engine, single-seat, multi-role stealth fighter which is tasked with performing a variety of missions, including strike, air superiority, surveillance, reconnaissance, and electronic warfare. Having been called the most lethal, survivable, and connected fighter aircraft in the world, the F-35 is intended to operate until 2070. Lockheed Martin is the primary contractor, along with principal partners BAE Systems and Northrop Grumman. The F-35 is an international fighter, with partner nations that include Norway, Australia, Denmark, Canada, and the Netherlands. The F-35 is actually a family of aircraft that is produced in 3 main variants: the CTOL or Conventional Takeoff and Landing F-35A, the STOVL or Short Takeoff and Vertical Landing F-35B, and the CV Catobar or Catapult Assisted Takeoff but Arrested Recovery F-35C. Let's start by taking a look at the specifications for the F-35A. Length 51.4 feet. Height 14.4 feet. Wingspan 35 feet. Maximum speed Mach 1.6 at altitude or 700 knots at sea level. Empty weight 29,300 pounds. Maximum takeoff weight 70,000 pounds. Range 669 nautical miles on internal fuel, 760 nautical miles for an interdiction mission on internal fuel or for internal air-to-air configuration. Thrust to weight ratio 0.87 at gross weight or 1.07 at loaded weight with 50% internal fuel. Engine thrust class. 1 Pratt & Whitney F-135 PW100 afterburning turbofan, 28,000 pounds of thrust dry or 43,000 pounds of thrust with afterburner. The F-35A is armed with the internal GAU-22A 25mm 4-barrel rotary cannon with 180 rounds of ammunition. The F-35B and C models can take an external pod with the same cannon and 220 rounds. Additionally, the F-35 has 4 internal stations in 2 weapons bays which are used to maintain its stealth profile, and 6 external hardpoints, 3 under each wing, that can be used for non-stealth missions. The internal stations can carry up to 5,700 pounds, while the external stations can hold up to 15,000 pounds. Total weapons payload capacity is 18,000 pounds. The F-35 can carry a diverse range of weapons, including, for air-to-air missions, heat-seeking AIM-9X Sidewinders or AIM-132 ASRAAM missiles, radar-guided AIM-120 AMRAAMs or MDBA Meteor missiles. For air-to-ground missions, AGM-154 Joint Standoff Weapons or JSOWs, Paveway Laser-Guided Bombs, Mark 20 Rockeye Cluster Bombs, Mark 77 Incendiary Cluster Bombs, the AGM-158 Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile, the AGM-88 HARM Anti-Radar Missile. For anti-ship operations, the AGM-158C Long Range Anti-Ship Missile or LRSAM, and hopefully one that never gets used, the B-61 Thermonuclear Gravity Bomb. This list is by no means inclusive, as there are several future payload options being developed for the F-35. The F-35 is equipped with the AN/APG-81, an actively electronically scanned array or AESA radar. An evolution of the F-22's AN/APG-77 radar, the APG-81 radar includes the air-to-air modes found on the F-22, along with advanced air-to-ground modes that utilize high-resolution mapping, the ability to track multiple ground-moving targets, and electronic warfare capabilities. In a real-life flight test, 23 targets were within 100 miles of an F-35. In less than 3 seconds, 19 were automatically detected and tracked, with all 23 targets detected and tracked in less than 9 seconds. The radar continued to track these targets while continuing to search for new targets. Additionally, air-to-air and air-to-ground modes can be run simultaneously on the F-35's large cockpit display. These abilities offer first look, first shot, and first kill capability to the F-35. It is not difficult to see why the APG-81 has been called the world's most advanced fire control radar found on a fighter. The F-35 also makes use of the only 360-degree spherical situational awareness system. Known as Distributed Aperture System or DAS, it consists of 6 infrared cameras mounted around the aircraft, which send HD real-time imagery directly to the pilot's helmet. This allows the pilot to fully see the environment around them in day or night conditions with no loss of clarity or quality. Among other features, DAS provides detection and tracking of missiles, fire control, tracking of friendly aircraft to enhance tactical maneuvering, and navigation assistance for both day and night modes. Furthermore, DAS integrates with other aircraft sensors, meaning that if the radar detects objects of interest, the DAS algorithms analyze them and recommends to the pilot in which order to deal with the threats, essentially providing data fusion. Additionally, the F-35 can make use of the world's first and only sensor platform, which provides forward-looking infrared or FLIR and infrared search and track or IRST functionality, which is known as an Electrical Optical Targeting System or EOTS. Other aircraft make use of EOTS systems, but the F-35's is integrated into a combined unit. This lightweight system further enhances the pilot's situational awareness and is housed in a stealthy low-drag housing with a sapphire window. The EOTS integrates via high-speed fiber optic interface into the aircraft's integrated central computer. Unlike other fighters, the F-35 does not have a heads-up display or HUD. Instead, the F-35's pilots make use of a helmet-mounted display system, or HMDS, to view flight and combat data at all times. The HMDS also receives image data from the DAS and allows the pilot to effectively see through the aircraft. Additionally, the helmet allows for high angles of bore sight target locking, meaning that the pilot can lock on a target and fire a missile at another aircraft that is not oriented towards the F-35's nose. The main display in the F-35's cockpit is a 20 by 8 inch panoramic touchscreen that, among other things, displays instrument, navigation, and combat data. The display allows the pilot to customize the information to meet the pilot's needs. Additionally, there is also a smaller backup display, and speech recognition algorithms are implemented to further enhance the pilot interface. All of these systems combine to provide sensor fusion, which creates an integrated view of the battlefield. This provides the F-35 with unprecedented situational awareness and can be distributed to other land, sea, and air assets via secure data links, such as the Multifunction Advanced Data Link, or MADL, making the F-35 a force multiplier on the modern battlefield. Along with advanced avionics and sensor fusion, stealth is another key feature of the F-35. The airframe was designed and shaped to reduce the radar cross-section, or RCS. This was done by aligning edges, making use of serrated skin panels, and masking the engine face. Furthermore, the F-35 has a divertless supersonic inlet, or DSI, which uses a forward swept cowl and compression bump to divert the boundary layer away from the engine duct. Additionally, the F-35 makes use of radar absorbent materials, or RAM. The F-35 applied lessons learned from previous stealth applications such as the F-22, and as a result, the F-35 skin is more durable and requires less maintenance than older topcoats. At certain angles and frequencies, the F-35's RCS is lower than a metal golf ball and compares favorably to the F-22. Additionally, the F-35's radio frequency emitters also employ rigorous controls to minimize or prevent their detection. The F-35 is the product of the Joint Strike Fighter, or JSF program, which itself is actually a merger of several programs, including the Common Affordable Lightweight Fighter and the Supersonic STOLVL Fighter, or SSF. Following the end of the Cold War and reduced defense budgets, both the Navy's Advanced Fighter Attack and the Air Force's multi-role fighter programs were canceled. Additionally, the Navy also canceled the A-12 Avenger II, which was to be a replacement for the A-6 in 1991 due to cost overruns. At the same time, the Naval Advanced Tactical Fighter program, which was to be a replacement for the F-14, was also canceled. This led to the formation of the Joint Advanced Strike Technology, or JAST program, in 1993. By 1995, with the inclusion of STOLVL requirements, the program was renamed Joint Strike Fighter, or JSF. The goal of the JSF was an ambitious one: replace the Harrier, A-10, F-16, F-A-18, and F-117 with a single family of fighters. To handle such an undertaking, international cooperation was needed from the start. The United Kingdom joined as a founding member of the JSF in 1995 and became a Tier 1 partner. Following a concept demonstration phase, or CDP, Italy and the Netherlands joined as Tier 2 partners, and Canada, Denmark, Norway, Austria, and Turkey joined as Tier 3 partners. Because of the international participation, the F-35 was intended for export from day one, unlike the F-22, which cannot be exported. In 1997, as part of the concept development phase, Lockheed Martin and Boeing were selected as final competitors. Boeing's concept demonstrator was designated as the X-32, while the Lockheed demonstrator was designated the X-35. British Aerospace and Northrop Grumman joined the Lockheed team, and the competition was on. Each team was to produce 2 flying examples, one for conventional takeoff and landing with carrier capabilities, and the other for STOLVL. The Lockheed X-35 STOLVL entrant utilized a system that connected a drive shaft to the turbines, which turned a lift fan that essentially operates like a helicopter's main rotor. This approach was seen as an evolution of previous examples with dedicated engines to provide vertical lift in aircraft such as the Convair Model 200 and the Yakovlev Yak 141. the dedicated engines basically became dead weight in level flight, and by instead using a lift fan, weight was reduced and less maintenance was required. In contrast, the Boeing X-32 STOVL entrant used a directed lift system, which reconfigured the turbofan to engage in STOVL operations. And while the directed lift system has been used on aircraft like the Harrier, it was not as efficient as the X-35's lift fan. In October of 2000, the X-35A first flew. After performing 28 flights where both subsonic and supersonic performance was evaluated, the airframe was converted to the STOVL version, which was designated the X-35B. The conversion of the airframe was due to the fact that only 2 prototypes could be flown, and the second airframe was reserved to test the carrier variant, which had a longer wingspan and was designated the X-35C. This conversion also served to demonstrate the commonality between the 3 designs. By October of 2001, Lockheed Martin was declared the winner and the X-32 faded into history. A distinctive-looking airplane, the X-32 did offer some advantages, but the X-35 was deemed the better aircraft. Let me know if you'd like to see a video on the X-32. Getting back to the results of the competition, although the prototype was designated X-35, the official designation was going to be F-24. However, it is alleged that the program manager, Major General Mike Hoff, announced the designation F-35 and the name stuck. Apparently, even Lockheed Martin was surprised. Let me know in the comments if you have any insider information on this. Taking the X-35 family and turning them into production fighters proved to be more complicated and costly than anyone imagined. One of the early challenges came from adding all the aircraft systems that the F-35 relies on. Ultimately, the weight adjustments for the 3 airframes delayed the project by some 18 months and cost an estimated $6 billion. By 2006, in Fort Worth, Texas, the first F-35A, which was designated AA-1, was rolled out and eventually flown. The name Lightning II was also given in 2006, the original Lightning being the World War II era Lockheed P-38. Another challenge was developing and deploying the software for the F-35. For initial production, the F-35 software and hardware upgrades would be released in batches known as blocks, with an initial plan for 6 releases. The first 2 blocks, 1A and 1B, were designed for pilot training, with Block 2A being used for additional training upgrades. Block 2B was released as the first combat-ready version for the Marines. Block 3I was the release for the Air Force, and the final release, known as Block 3F, has all the software required for full warfighting capability. Currently, the Block 4 upgrade is being worked on, which includes additions of new weapon options and enhancements to the pilot interface, including the pilot's ability to see behind them without having to turn their head. Just like airframe developments took longer than anticipated, the software development effort suffered from large delays and cost overruns. An ambitious effort in scope, the F-35's code is over 8 million lines and includes many groundbreaking features. However, this did come at a price. The initial project was estimated to cost $200 billion in 2002 dollars. That estimate has been revised to $406 billion and $1.1 trillion that would be needed for operations and maintenance through 2070, essentially costing $1.5 trillion over the life of the program. Still, as more units are produced and problems are resolved, the unit cost of a single F-35 goes down. For example, the F-35A now costs about $78 million. The F-35B costs about $101 million, and the F-35C costs about $95 million. In 2015, the F-35B entered service with the Marine Corps, and in 2016, the F-35A entered service with the U.S. Air Force. The Navy's F-35C entered service in 2019. The United States is the primary operator of the F-35, with the Air Force planning to operate over 1,700 F-35As. The Navy is planning to operate over 270 F-35Cs, and the Marines are planning for over 300 F-35Bs and 67 F-35Cs. The United Kingdom has plans to operate 138 total F-35s, which will consist of F-35Bs and Cs for the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force. Italy is planning for 60 F-35As and 30 F-35Bs. The Netherlands plans for 46 F-35As. Australia plans for 100 F-35As. Norway is planning for 52 F-35As. Denmark plans for 27 F-35As. Canada has indicated the need for 88 new fighters, possibly F-35As. There's an open competition going on for that right now. Israel plans for 50 F-35As and redesignates them as F-35Is after local modifications are done to the avionics. Japan has plans for 100 F-35As and 42 F-35Bs. The Republic of Korea plans for 40 F-35As, while Belgium plans for 34 F-35As. Poland is looking to receive 32 F-35As. Although many details of the F-35's operational deployments are still classified, there are a couple of known examples that stand out. In 2018, during a test mission consisting of at least 3 Israeli Air Force F-35Is, the aircraft flew from Tel Aviv to the Iranian capital of Tehran and back. The event was publicly unconfirmed. However, as a result of the mission, Iran's supreme leader reportedly fired the Air Force chief and commander of the Iran Revolutionary Guard. Also in 2018, Marine F-35Bs operating off the amphibious assault ship Essex conducted strikes on Taliban targets. The number of aircraft or type of munitions used were not disclosed, but the attack on a fixed Taliban position was considered a success. The F-35 certainly has had unprecedented cost overruns and has taken longer to bring into frontline service than anyone ever thought. However, the program did have some lofty goals and set out to not only be the best 5th generation air-to-everything platform, but also be made available to allies. Today, there have been over 550 F-35s delivered to 9 nations, with more than 1,100 pilots trained and 9,400 maintainers. F-35 production employs more than 254,000 direct and indirect jobs in the US, in 48 states and Puerto Rico. The Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II is a 5th generation single-engine, single-seat, multi-role stealth fighter, which is tasked with performing a variety of missions, including strike, air superiority, surveillance, reconnaissance, electronic warfare, and now as an aggressor aircraft. Having been called the most lethal, survivable, and connected fighter aircraft in the world, the F-35 is intended to operate until 2070. With over 800 examples delivered and more than 500,000 flight hours logged, the F-35 is easily the most produced and flown 5th generation fighter in the world. So why do we need aggressor F-35s? As the geopolitical world situation changes, the Department of Defense must now shift its focus from low-intensity counterterrorism operations to planning for a potential engagement with a near-peer enemy. Along with a change in strategic thinking and updating weapon systems, training must also be adjusted. Perhaps the most comprehensive training regimen in the world takes place each year at Nellis Air Force Base's Red Flag exercise. During Red Flag, the US and Allied forces gather together to form a Blue Force, which is tasked with various mission objectives. These exercises teach coordination with dissimilar aircraft and systems, while also maximizing the strengths of each Allied platform to achieve mission goals. However, the Blue Air Force is not operating in a vacuum. They are opposed by a Red Force, which includes not just air-to-air threats, but also surface-to-air, information, and space threats that all work together in an attempt to deny the Blue Force their mission objectives. Some of the best pilots in the world are assigned to the Red Air Force, who carefully study adversary weapons, tactics, and doctrine, and then in turn use their aircraft to simulate actions that adversaries would take against the Blue Force. Up until recently, the aircraft used for Red Air consisted primarily of 4th generation F-16s and 3rd generation F-5s. Both of these aircraft are extremely maneuverable and have proven useful in training pilots how to hone their dogfighting skills. Even so, without the use of low observable 5th generation adversary aircraft, Allied pilots will be unable to prepare for the threats faced by near-peer adversaries in the future. As a result, during recent red flag exercises at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, the Red Air Team has been employing F-35s as aggressors. The addition of Lightnings to the training regimen makes what is the best training program available to Allies even better. So how has the F-35 performed as an aggressor aircraft? According to an F-22 pilot who participated in a recent red flag exercise, the red F-35s were challenging even for the Raptor to maintain good situational awareness as to where the Lightnings were at all times. In a typical exercise, the Blue Force is tasked with missions such as offensive strikes or defending critical positions. During Red Flag 21-3, F-35 aggressors were introduced and worked alongside the F-16s of the 64th Aggressor Squadrons. The Lightnings proceeded to dismantle significant components of the Blue Air game plan. These integrated offensive and defensive systems took full advantage of the F-35's stealth and sensor capabilities, which caused Allied combat forces to work hard for every win. Additionally, by using the F-35s, the Red Air Force is now detecting the Blue Force at further ranges than in previous exercises. Operationally, this translates to an increase in the threat level posed by the aggressors as compared to the previously mentioned 3rd and 4th generation Red aircraft that have been used. This is primarily due to the better detection capabilities that the F-35 possesses against everybody because of the more advanced radar and avionics found in the Lightning. Simply put, the F-35 is the only 5th generation fighter aircraft available in sufficient numbers to realistically replicate low observable threats that could challenge the Blue Force. Next, we'll take a look at splinter patterns. What are they and why are they important? The aggressor pilots also contribute to an important visual range component of training by emulating the paint schemes found on Chinese and Russian aircraft. The idea is that once an Allied pilot comes within visual range of an aggressor, they will be seeing a similar situation as they would with an actual threat aircraft. A quick case in point, F-35s have already been reported flying alongside Chinese J-20s in the South China Sea. These paint patterns found on Russian and Chinese jets are informally referred to as splinter schemes, and from recently released photos, we can see that the aggressor F-35s have begun to adopt them. The question is, does this affect the radar absorbing material or RAM coatings that are part of the stealth application? Based on these photos, it would appear that the nose and leading edge surfaces need to remain in the standard gray color as seen as production F-35s. Still, that may be due to the fact that the Air Force has only recently started to convert some F-35s into aggressor aircraft, and as the program matures, we will see more diverse splinter patterns such as those found in today's aggressor F-5s and F-16s. Speaking of the aggressor F-5s and F-16s, the Air Force operates the 4th generation F-16s, while the Department of the Navy operates the 3rd generation F-5s. These F-5s are designated as F-5Ns and are based out of Naval Air Station or NAS Key West, Florida, Marine Corps Air Station Yuma, Arizona, and NAS Fallon, Nevada. Some of the maintenance and training is subcontracted. Meanwhile, the aggressor F-16s are operated by the Air Force's 64th Aggressor Squadron. What's interesting about the addition of the F-35 as aggressors is that the USAF has reactivated the 65th Aggressor Squadron as an all-Lightning aggressor unit. The pilots chosen to operate these Lightnings will be high-time F-35 operators who will be able to make the most use out of the platform. The 65th has a long history of serving as aggressors, having most recently flown the F-15C up until the unit's deactivation in 2014 as part of budget cuts. The reactivation of the 65th in June of this year shows that the Air Force is committed to giving its pilots the most realistic and modern training possible. Along these lines, the Air Force has announced that it will no longer renew the contracts it had with private operators, which have been using F-5s and A-4s as aggressor aircraft, citing that there needs to be a focus on high-end capabilities, and the only aircraft that is able to replicate a peer adversary is the F-35 Lightning. We've seen the need to use the F-35 as an aggressor aircraft, but what about the cost to operate these F-35s? It's well known that the F-35's cost per flight hour is naturally higher than the F-16s, which are currently being used as aggressors. However, it is important to point out that the F-35 airframes that will be implemented by the 65th are some older build Lightnings that are not combat coded. These early production F-35s will actually have to have some of their capability decreased to better represent the Chinese fighter threats seen today. This could also mean that the RAM coatings will be underapplied or not used, lending further credence to the fact that we will likely see all of the splinter patterns found on other aggressor aircraft. Additionally, as more F-35s are produced for the United States and the growing list of nations that are adopting the Lightning, unit costs and per flight hour costs will continue to drop. This brings us to the other aggressor aircraft, the existing F-16s that are being used today. These Vipers will continue to be operated by the 64th Aggressor Squadron to reflect the fact that not every adversary encountered will be an all 5th generation fighter force, and allowing the Red Air Force to use a hybrid of 5th and 4th generation fighters, which is the most likely scenario that would be faced today. Overall, the 64th is still a viable and relevant aggressor force, and has received an influx of more F-16s, including Block 42 variants, which are being retrofitted with the APG-83 Actively Electronically Scanned Array or ASA radars. These upgrades will give the aggressors a further increase in capability and allow for realistic, integrated offensive and defensive air operations that consist of both 4th and 5th generation fighters for the Red Air Force. So what does this all mean? The addition of F-35s to Red Flag and other aggressor training programs signals a shift in the training doctrine at Nellis Air Force Base and for the Red Flag exercise overall, along with allowing Air Force and Navy pilots to develop tactics to counter low observable 5th generation aircraft. The Lightning aggressors will also benefit allies who operate 4th plus generation fighters such as the Rafale and the Typhoon. The 65th Aggressor Squadron has stated that they will focus on China, meaning they will emulate Chinese doctrine and capabilities when going up against Allied Blue forces. Along with this, as mentioned previously, there's also a shift underway by the Air Force to get back to providing in-house training and not renewing the contracts of private operators of simulated Red Air Forces, which have become something of a cottage industry in the last decade plus. By all accounts, the existing contracts for these independent operators run through 2025, so it will be interesting to see if the Air Force can spool up enough F-35 and in-house aggressor units to cover what the contractors have been providing, especially in the close air support role. Additionally, the aggressor units will not just operate out of Nellis and Red Flag, but also in the Joint Pacific-Alaska Range Complex or JPARC. This should provide a suitable mixture of terrain types and weather conditions to train under, further allowing for more real-world scenarios. Having a dedicated 5th generation aggressor squadron is nothing short of a quantum leap in the threat levels and training opportunity provided by today's aggressor pilots, and will ensure that our air crews and support personnel maintain the highest levels of readiness when it's needed most. Recently, some F-35Cs have been spotted flying out of Naval Base Ventura County or NBVC in California with a distinct chrome or mirror-like finish. These aircraft belong to the Navy's Air Test and Evaluation Squadron 9, or VX-9, also known as the Vampires. This is an interesting and apparently continuing trend, as there have also been reports of F-22 Raptors and even evidently still operational F-117 Nighthawks with similar coatings. While the exact purpose of these coatings is still classified, speculation is that they assist in reducing the aircraft's infrared signature while not degrading existing stealth characteristics. Interestingly, in August of this year, the NBVC Public Affairs Office sent out a press release stating that the base would host approximately 50 aircraft, some of which would be supporting multiple test events. The official reason given for the increased activity was to provide unit-level training for pilots and aircrews at the nearby sea range. However, given the concurrent sightings of these specially coded VX-9 F-35Cs, along with EA-18G Growlers and Super Hornets that are also assigned to VX-9, it would seem to indicate that rigorous testing exercises are being held to evaluate the effectiveness of these new coatings. The selection of the F-35C as a testbed to represent the Lightning variants is compelling. After all, the C model is purpose-built for naval CV Catobar or catapult-assisted takeoff but assisted recovery operations. The C model also has the largest wingspan of the 3 Lightning variants, so this may play into the testing program when it comes to total surface area. However, as previously mentioned, given the fact that the Air Force's F-22s and F-117s have also been spotted with similar coatings, it is possible that the Navy and Air Force have combined their efforts to test distinct airframes with this new application. Why would these 3 aircraft, with different mission designs, be given these coatings? If we take a deeper dive into how these three types might operate, we can envision a combined scenario involving these three aircraft. For example, the F-117s could serve as forward-deployed reconnaissance assets, assessing and detecting enemy air defenses while remaining stealthy. F-35s could then engage identified targets in a suppression of enemy air defenses or SEAD role, while the F-22s could fly top cover in a low observable combat air patrol or CAP role. In this way, these stealth assets could perform a combined arms action against a heavily defended or high-value target. These mirror-like coatings would likely degrade the performance of enemy passive optical and infrared sensors, such as infrared search and track or IRST platforms, allowing for longer operating times while remaining undetected. Before we continue with other uses of the new coatings, today's video is brought to you by Morning Brew, a totally free daily newsletter delivered right to your inbox Monday through Sunday. It takes me just a few minutes to get caught up on everything going on in the world that is important to how I operate. It's just 5 minutes to get from top to bottom, and if there's something that catches my eye that I want to drill down on a little bit more, I can. Whether that's how Harvard may lose its richest school status to the University of Texas, or how nuclear energy is making a steamy comeback. And if there isn't anything that catches my attention, I haven't wasted pointless hours browsing the internet. On top of this, Morning Brew's writing is witty, punchy, and most importantly, straight to the point. There really isn't a reason not to subscribe to Morning Brew, especially if you're interested in finance, business, or tech, and you value your time. Again, it's completely free and takes just 15 seconds to sign up. So go ahead, click the link, morningbrewdaily.com/PilotPhotog to sign up and help this channel for free. And now, back to the lightning and other potential uses of the new coatings. Just like the Raptor's mirror-like coatings, the ones currently being fielded by the F-35Cs are also likely being used as a testbed for the next generation air dominance or NGAD fighter. The Air Force refers to this testing with their Raptors as the Advanced Technology Development or ATD program. While there is not currently a known name for the Navy equivalent, it is likely that similar tests are being performed with the VX-9 F-35Cs. Aside from the new coatings, the ATD and equivalent programs would introduce new hardware and software technologies that not only would be used on the NGAD fighter, but also likely incorporated into the F-35 and F-22 fleets as future upgrades. If you'd like to learn more about the specially coated F-22s, I've done another video all about the Chrome Raptor, link in the description below. Getting back to the Lightning, since there appears to be active research underway on the coating of the F-35C, we can assume that the findings will be applied to the A and B models as well. This is significant since the global F-35 fleet is growing each month, with the most common variant being the Air Force's A version that includes an internal 25mm gun. And when it comes to adoption rates, the numbers speak for themselves. To date, there have been over 840 F-35 aircraft delivered, with more than 1,750 pilots trained, over 500,000 flight hours logged, and there are Lightnings operating at 36 bases worldwide, including 10 aircraft carriers. Along with this, recent acquisitions by Finland, Canada, and soon Germany have made the F-35 the 5th-generation fighter of the West. It is no coincidence that all these acquisitions by allied nations are coming at a time when geopolitical tensions are on the rise. So how would the Lightning perform as it becomes a part of so many distinct air forces? Along with full sensor fusion, one of the game-changing components of the F-35 is the Lightning's Multifunction Advanced Data Link or MAD-L. This next-generation data link expands on the types of missions that allied F-35s can undertake, while allowing for real-time sharing of targeting data among other allied assets. 4th-generation pilots spend much of their time processing and prioritizing threats. The Lightnings do this automatically. This is why almost every pilot that has flown the Lightning says they would not go back to 4th gen. Effectively, MAD-L allows NATO and other allied countries to conduct integrated operations, which opens up the possibilities for missions that were previously not possible. This has already been shown in recent wargames, when allied partners demonstrated this ability to full effect, allowing Lightnings to find and destroy targets from ranges where it was able to remain undetected. This effectively pushes the operational tactical scenarios much further out, giving F-35 pilots time to detect, lock, and destroy a target before it even knows there's a Lightning on the scene. Along with sensor fusion, the MAD-L system is making the F-35 a battlefield data manager and an aerial quarterback in the sky. Perhaps now we can begin to understand why so many nations are making the Lightning their 5th generation fighter of choice. However, as far ahead that the F-35 is today, development is not at a standstill by any measure. Along with increasing adoption rates, there are more planned or proposed upgrades for the Lightning. One such example is the Air Force's Adaptive Engine Transition Program, or AETP, the goal of which is to place a revolutionary engine design into the F-35A and C variants. The B version will likely follow. The new engine is what is known as an adaptive cycle engine. This type of engine automatically produces 2 distinct modes of operation: high thrust output for combat maneuvers or high efficiency performance for extended loiter times. General Electric has developed a working prototype designated the XA100. In recent tests, GE's new engine has shown a 20% increase in thrust along with a 30% increase in range. Additionally, the new engine runs much cooler, which allows for increased electrical power generation for the aircraft. This increased power output allows the Lightning to run even more advanced systems not possible on other platforms. 2 such examples are directed energy weapons, or lasers, and the Navy's planned laser-induced plasma filament hologram. This system would project the heat signature of another aircraft hundreds of feet away from its host to distract and decoy heat-seeking infrared missiles. Improving thermal management also allows for up to 2 times system architecture growth, providing ample opportunity for future demands as the F-35 platform grows and matures. Given all of this, we can see that the chrome or mirror-like coatings are essentially one of many upgrade initiatives that are being worked on for the F-35 fleet. Like it or not, the Lightning is simply becoming the de facto fighter for Western nations, combining stealth, multi-role capabilities, sensor fusion, and drone integration into one platform. As a result, as more nations adopt and purchase the F-35, per unit costs and operational costs go down. In fact, the cost per flight hour of the Lightning fleet has gone down by 50% since 2015, and the purchase price of an F-35A is lower than most 4th generation fighters. The F-35 has become the most expensive weapons system ever, and as a result has become an easy target for criticism. I myself have been critical of the F-35 in previous videos on this channel. Today, we will take a look at what the F-35 was designed to do and why it's already successful. Essentially, when the F-35 was designed, super maneuverability or dogfighting was not its top priority. We have to remember that the F-35 was designed as a fighter and attack platform, designed from the ground up to perform both air superiority and strike missions. In fact, some have stated that the F-35 should have been designated the A-35 or F-A-35. Instead of prioritizing dogfighting, the F-35 placed stealth and sensor fusion as its main focus. In this role, the F-35 is unprecedented. When it comes to the F-35 sensor platform, it can run both air-to-air and air-to-ground modes simultaneously, providing the F-35 with first look, first shoot, and first kill capabilities. Additionally, the F-35 makes use of the Distributed Aperture System, or DAS. DAS provides 360-degree spherical awareness, and this is accomplished in part by using 6 cameras which are mounted all throughout the aircraft, providing real-time HD data to the pilot. The F-35 also does not feature a HUD, instead integrating telemetry normally found on HUDs directly into the pilot's helmet. This allows for the pilot to constantly see critical information at all times. Furthermore, the DAS algorithm analyzes threats and prioritizes them for the pilot to act accordingly. The F-35's advanced data links also provide connectivity to all allied assets in the area, essentially sharing targeting and sensor information with any connected platform. One potential application for this could be for an F-35 to lock onto an aircraft and pass that data to a SAM site to shoot at it, or to an F-15 Eagle II loaded with an extreme amount of AMRAAMs that could prosecute the target. Due to its advanced sensor platform and sensor suite, the F-35 has been called the most interconnected fighter in the world, and the reality is that no 4th generation fighter can match this interconnectivity. Sensor fusion is the next evolution in aerial warfare, and the F-35 is definitely leading that front. It's important to note that maneuvering still matters and dogfighting skills are still needed, but these are really a last resort. And remember, F-35 pilots still practice air-to-air combat maneuvering at exercises such as Red Flag. Along with sensor fusion, another asset that the F-35 brings to the battlefield is its role as a drone controller. This is somewhat an overlooked feature of the F-35, as it is still under development and really starting to come into its own in recent years. For example, the Department of Defense's Skyborg AI program looks to use drones such as the XQ-58 Valkyrie as a low-cost attritable fighter. In this case, attritable means reusable but can be afforded to be lost in battle. These Valkyries would be sent out in front of an F-35 and could serve as an inexpensive early warning system and picket line. In an attack role, the Valkyries could be used to set off defenses and cause surface-to-air missiles to fire at the drones, keeping the F-35 safe. Additionally, the drones themselves can carry munitions, so they could be used to intercept and attack or prosecute targets. An F-35 controlling these drones therefore could be seen as a force multiplier, maximizing the F-35's effectiveness while minimizing the risk to the human pilot. The F-35 also provides versatility in its variable airframe offerings. There are currently 3 variants, the A, B, and C. The F-35A is the most common variant and features an internal 25mm gun, has the highest payload, and additionally the lowest cost of the 3 variants. Meanwhile, the F-35B is the short takeoff and vertical landing or STOVL version of the Lightning, and is currently in service with the US Marines and the UK's Royal Navy. The short takeoff and vertical landing provides tactical flexibility as it can operate out of unimproved airfields or carriers that do not have a catapult system. Additionally, the F-35B is the first supersonic STOVL aircraft and the only 5th generation STOVL available today. And lastly, the F-35C is the carrier-based version of the Lightning, which implements cattle-bar or catapult-assisted takeoff but arrested recovery to operate out of carriers. The F-35C is currently in use today by the US Navy. And as they say, numbers don't lie. The F-35 was designed from day one to be a joint strike fighter, meaning it would be available as an export option to allies. In this way, success can be measured in the number of countries that have adopted it and are planning to adopt it. For example, Australia has 40 examples delivered out of 72 planned. Belgium plans for 34 F-35As. Denmark plans for 27 F-35As. Israel has 27 of 75 F-35Is, which are locally modified F-35s. Italy plans for 60 F-35As and 15 F-35Bs. Japan has 13 F-35As operational with a total of 147 planned, which includes 42 F-35Bs. The Netherlands has 17 of 46 F-35As. Norway is currently operating 25 F-35As out of 52 planned. Poland has placed an order for 32 F-35As. South Korea has 11 F-35As out of 60 ordered, along with an additional 20 F-35Bs. Singapore has orders for 4 F-35Bs with an option for 8 more. The UAE has planned for up to 50 F-35As. The UK has received 21 F-35Bs with a total of 48 to 80 planned. The Swiss have recently chosen the F-35 as their new fighter and stated their decision was based on costs. And as we know, the Swiss know a thing or two about money. Additionally, as more and more nations adopt the F-35, the unit cost goes down. Current F-35 prices are under $80 million a copy, which is significantly lower than 4th generation platforms like the Eurofighter and Typhoon, each of which are over $100 million a copy. And finally, the United States has put the largest order of F-35s with over 1,700 F-35As planned for the Air Force, 353 F-35Bs and 67 F-35Cs planned for the Marines, and the Navy has plans for over 270 F-35Cs. All of these orders have kept the F-35 production line busy, with over 690 aircraft delivered to date, and over 245,000 sorties already flown by F-35s. All of this adds up to say, the F-35 will only keep getting better, more numerous, and more affordable. The F-35 has definitely had its share of cost overruns and delays, but let's remember it set out to be a cutting-edge air-to-everything platform, with modularity and upgrades in mind. To this end, F-35s are predicted to serve until 2070 and may very well be the last manned fighter for the US Armed Forces and its allies. Being cutting edge is always difficult and poses its challenges. The F-35 has come to age in the era of social media and the 24-hour news cycle. Some of you may recall when the F-16 was being introduced, initially was known as the lawn dart and had its fair share of problems and growing pains in its early years. However, the F-16, based on numbers produced, has become the world's most popular fighter. Perhaps the F-35 will follow a similar path. And finally, if there's still doubts about the F-35, as they say, imitation is the most sincere form of flattery, Both Russia and China have announced plans to produce a fighter that is similar in capability and design to the F-35. In Russia's case, the recently announced Su-75 Checkmate, link to my video on the Checkmate in the description below. And for China, it is the Shenyang FC-31 or J-35. Therefore, between a number of nations adopting it and adversaries copying it, you can say that the F-35 has and will continue to be successful and perhaps may just have been misunderstood. Having said that, keep in mind, there's still a need for 4th generation fighters, and we are lucky to count Vipers, Eagles, Super Hornets, Typhoon, and Rafales as allies, which are all excellent fighters. However, sensor fusion and stealth are here to stay and will likely play a large role in the coming years, both tactically and strategically. In a recent statement from the F-35's Joint Program Office or JPO, quote, the U.S. Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps are jointly developing and integrating an advanced radar for the F-35 Lightning II, which is capable of defeating current and projected adversarial air and surface threats. End quote. The statement goes on to further say that this advanced radar will be compatible with all variants of the F-35. Today, we will take a look at what this new radar means for the F-35 Lightning and why the world's most advanced and numerous 5th generation fighter keeps getting better with continuous upgrades. Before we get into the 5 reasons why the new radar is so important, a couple of things to mention. First, the F-35's current radar is the AN/APG-81, which is widely considered the world's most advanced radar on a fighter aircraft today. The new radar has been designated the AN/APG-85, which interestingly was thought to be a typo when it was first announced. Secondly, given the sensitive and classified nature of advanced radar capabilities, all that we know and what is presented in this video is from publicly available sources. Some of this information may change over time as we learn more about the APG-85. When we do, I'll make an updated video. Alright, let's begin. Coming in at reason number 5 is gallium nitride composition. Gallium nitride, or GaN based on its atomic symbols for each element, is an advanced semiconductor that dramatically lowers or reduces heat production along with power handling capability. Why does this matter? GaN-based radars are smaller, more powerful, and have a wider range of operating frequencies. As a result, the new APG-85 radar should increase the F-35's radar range and resolution dramatically. Some estimates show that the APG-85 will be able to process 10,000 more simultaneous data points than the existing APG-81. While this initially seemed absurd, imagine how much computational power has advanced in the last 20 years, and it begins to make more sense. Additionally, this new GaN material composition should also go a long way in supporting dynamic electronic warfare tactics, and should also go a long way in allowing the F-35 to act as a mini AWACS or airborne director, making the Lightning an even better drone controller and information node in the ever-increasingly complex battle space. Reason number 4, ECCM. While the APG-85 radar will provide enhanced detection ranges and resolution, it will also likely boost its offensive capabilities in the form of electronic countermeasures or ECCM. Today, many combat aircraft, ships, and vehicles incorporate some form of electronic countermeasures or ECM to jam or spoof radars. And while the current APG-81 itself is capable of ECCM, remember those extra operating frequencies we mentioned from the GaN composition? Well, those previously unavailable frequencies and the advanced computational power of the APG-85 should allow it to burn through enemy jamming using ECCM, thereby allowing the F-35 to track and targets at a much higher rate. This is significant given the rise of near-peer 5th generation fighters like the Chengdu J-20, which boast some stealth characteristics and electronic countermeasures of their own. In theory, the APG-85 should be able to neutralize some, if not all, of these advantages. And before we get into the other reasons why the F-35's new radar is a game changer, something that should be on your radar is today's sponsor, War Thunder. War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, and allows you to play more than 2,000 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships, while battling in dynamic combined arms battles against other players. Each vehicle is superbly detailed and modeled down to their individual components, offering you a highly immersive combat experience. The collection of vehicles in War Thunder is amazing, spanning over 100 years of development, from the 1920s through today. No matter your skill level or experience, War Thunder offers intense PvP battles at various immersion levels for all playstyles. And you don't need any special hardware or expensive controls. You can fly any aircraft using nothing more than a mouse and keyboard thanks to the game's intuitive mouse aim mode. I'm currently flying the unusual XP-55 Ascender, and think you'll enjoy seeing and flying these historical vehicles in action. The graphics are outstanding, especially the fire and smoke effects along with the vehicle details. So play War Thunder now on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox. When you register using my link, you'll get a large free bonus pack that includes multiple premium vehicles, a premium account, boosters, and more. Coming in at reason number 3, adaptive engines. In order to provide sufficient power to the APG-85 radar and its subsystems, a newer engine must be produced that can deliver more electrical power. Fortunately, there are 2 engines in active testing which will accomplish exactly this, specifically General Electric's XA100 and Pratt & Whitney's XA101. Known as adaptive cycle engines, these power plants provide the best of both worlds in engine performance, high thrust output for combat operations, and high efficiency modes for extending range and loiter times. The engine itself determines which mode is best given operational circumstances, allowing the pilot to focus on flying and fighting with their weapon systems. These adaptive cycle engines also provide superior cooling, which in turn allows for more electrical power generation. This will be necessary to power the APG-85 given its massive computational requirements. It's safe to say that the new engines will go hand in hand with the APG-85 integration, powering the new radar to its fullest potential. Reason number 2. Block 4 upgrades. Along with the APG-85 radar and the adaptive cycle engines, the F-35 will be receiving numerous upgrades and enhancements. Collectively known as Block 4, these include upgrading the F-35's core processor, panoramic cockpit display systems, and memory. These computer upgrades will form the IT backbone to allow the F-35 to be continuously upgraded in the future as new developments become available. Block 4 is said to encompass some 75 upgrades to keep the Lightning on the cutting edge of 5th generation capability. Furthermore, some 17 new weapon systems are being enabled by these upgrades. While most are traditional kinetic weapons such as the GBU Stormbreaker small diameter bomb, some are non-kinetic such as directed energy weapons, aka lasers, or specialized waveforms to jam or confuse enemy systems. Again, the APG-85 will likely be the emitter or coordinator of these new waveforms and applications. Coming in at reason number 1, NGAD testbed. Aside from getting an enhanced radar and new capabilities for the F-35, the advanced APG-85 radar system will likely find its way into the 6th generation, Next Generation Air Dominance or NGAD fighter. Part of the development for NGAD is using advanced or evolved versions of proven technology. Both the F-35 Lightning and F-22 Raptor are actively being used in these roles. For example, the Raptor and Lightning have been spotted flying with chrome or mirror-like finishes recently. These advanced coatings are thought to reduce detection by passive infrared search and track or IRST systems, and could possibly be a new generation of radar-absorbing materials or RAM coatings. In fact, the recently revealed B-21 radar appeared to have a lighter coating than usual, so they could all be related. Testing these applications on proven airframes is only going to make the NGAD more effective and deadly. Again, the APG-85 radar likely falls into this NGAD testbed territory and is another win for both the F-35 and NGAD program. Conclusion. Interestingly, it appears that the new radar will only be installed on the Block 4 series of A, B, and C F-35s, leaving existing F-35s with their current APG-81 radars. As mentioned earlier, the APG-81 is today's most advanced radar found on a fighter and is itself an improved version of the APG-77 that is fielded by the F-22 Raptor. While it is conceivable that pre-Block 4 F-35s could be upgraded to the APG-85 radar, there is no confirmation of that at this time. On March 24th, the Air Forces of Finland, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway announced an agreement to operate their combined forces of over 200 fighter planes as a unified Nordic air defense force. This move is a historic first between these countries and was ratified via a joint declaration of intent or JDI on March 16th at Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany. United States Air Force General James Hecker, who is also the head of NATO Air Command, was present for the signing. Today, we will take a look at what this means for the region, what fighter planes comprise this newly formed Air Force, and what each jet brings to the table in terms of operational capability. The decision to unite the air forces of 4 nations under one command carries with it the ultimate goal of being able to operate seamlessly together as one force. This newly formed Air Force rivals that of a large European nation in numbers, and command and control is to be established by developing a Nordic concept for combined air operations, which will be based on an already known and established NATO methodology. It is important to point out that when this agreement was reached, Finland and Sweden were not yet part of NATO. However, on April 3rd, Finland became the 31st member of NATO, and as of this recording, Sweden is expected to formally become a member soon. So the question is, if all four nations are or will soon become part of NATO, why the need for a seemingly separate Nordic Air Force? There are actually four reasons that have been cited in the document which was shared following the agreement. First, combining the Nordic Air Forces allows for integrated operations, planning, and execution. This makes sense since the operating environments and conditions are very similar in the four countries involved. Secondly, the alliance allows for flexible and resilient air basing, meaning runways and maintenance facilities can be used by the partner nations more openly. Then there's the third factor, shared situational awareness. It's hard to imagine, but prior to this agreement, each of the four nations had to conduct their intelligence assessments and tracking of aircraft independently. The new agreement creates a common contiguous defense zone that essentially covers the Baltic Sea. And finally, the fourth reason stated is an allowance for common air education, training, and exercises to be held, allowing crews to cross-train and mutually support each other's forces. Alright, now let's get into the aircraft specifics for each of the four nations involved and what each platform brings to the newly formed alliance. Starting with Norway, who had been operating the Lockheed Martin F-16 Fighting Falcon up until 2022, which has been replaced by the Lockheed Martin F-35A Lightning. Norway has over 50 F-35s and is one of the early adopters of the Lightning, having acquired their first F-35s all the way back in 2017. In fact, Norway was the fourth country to acquire the Lightning after the United States, Israel, and Italy. The F-35 is without a doubt the most numerous and successful fifth-generation stealth fighter, with some 900 examples delivered and over 600,000 flight hours logged on the global fleet. Additionally, the Lightning has also won several high-profile fighter competitions, more on that later. As to what the Lightning brings to the table, we can start with sensor fusion and an airborne command node. Along with stealth or low observability, the F-35 was designed to integrate and leverage allied air assets and air defenses. This integration is so thorough that the F-35 has been often referred to as a quarterback in the sky, capable of directing assets and reading the enemy signals to plan its next moves. The F-35 also makes use of a distributed aperture system, or DAS, which provides 360-degree spherical situational awareness via cameras and sensors placed throughout the aircraft. Additionally, the F-35's fleet is being upgraded to the Block 4 standard, which, among many things, include numerous improvements in computational power, avionics, new weapon options, and even a more powerful radar that can detect and track targets at much longer ranges than today. I've done an entire video on the F-35's upgraded radar. I'll leave a link in the description below. Given the F-35's current and planned capabilities along with its lowering per unit cost, we can begin to see why the Lightning has won virtually every fighter procurement competition it has entered, including those for Finland and Switzerland. Moving on to the next partner in the Nordic Air Defense Agreement, Denmark, which currently operates over 40 F-16s with 27 F-35s on order. The F-16 Fighting Falcon, or Viper, is a fourth-generation fighter which was initially designed as a day air superiority fighter. However, throughout its long and storied career, the F-16 evolved into a true multi-role platform, implementing the first use of relaxed static stability or fly-by-wire flight control system. The F-16 is an agile aircraft and an excellent dogfighter. With over 4,500 examples built, the F-16 is the world's most numerous and combat-proven fourth-generation fighter. Although the F-16 is a non-stealth platform, it features low operating costs, high reliability or mission-capable rates, and mission flexibility in both air-to-air and air-to-ground roles. Denmark's F-16s are an excellent placeholder as their new F-35s are delivered and become operational. Next, we turn to Finland, who is currently operating some 50 FA-18Cs, with 64 F-35s on order. Like the F-16, the F-18 or Hornet is a multi-role fighter, However, unlike the F-16, the Hornet was designed for carrier operations and features an arresting hook, folding wings, and landing gear specifically designed to operate off of carriers. Finland's Hornets are land-based, and while also a non-stealthy 4th-generation fighter, the F-18 is a combat-proven platform with relatively high mission-capable rates. Moreover, since Finland shares a land border with Russia, Finnish Hornets have extensive experience flying near the border and likely tracking Russian aircraft that are in proximity to their mutual border. Still, the Finnish Hornets are nearing the end of their service lives, which is one reason that Finland has placed the largest order for new F-35s of the 4 Nordic countries. And last but certainly not least is Sweden, which finds itself in a unique position. While Norway, Denmark, and Finland are all moving to the F-35, Sweden is opting for the latest version of the Gripen, the JAS-39E. Aside from being an excellent aircraft, the Gripen is also designed and manufactured in Sweden. The Gripen is an extremely reliable, low-cost-to-operate multi-role fighter designed specifically to operate in the harsh Nordic environment. Today, Sweden operates about 70 of their C&D models, which are powered by a Volvo RM12 engine, a license-built version of the GE F404 engine, similar to those found in legacy Hornets such as the ones operated by Finland. The vastly improved E model of the Gripen will be powered by a General Electric RM16, which is similar to the F414 engines found on the Super Hornet. The E version will also feature advanced avionics and electronic countermeasures, which should provide an offset to the Gripen airframe's 4th generation design. In terms of the Nordic Alliance, the C&D versions will likely be used in similar ways that the 4th generation F-16s and F-18s are used, while the E version of the Gripen will likely be deployed in roles that are more aligned to the F-35's tasking, providing advanced detection along with command and control capabilities in a fighter-sized airframe. The formation of a unified Nordic Air Force is a direct response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine last year. In terms of deterring and potentially combating Russian aggression, this significant agreement has the potential to benefit all parties involved. While each Air Force brings unique capabilities to the table, they also share many similarities beyond their proximity. Collaborating would enhance the effectiveness and potency of air defense tasks and aerial surveillance, as well as providing greater flexibility and unpredictability in war planning. In today's era of multifaceted aerial threats, ranging from traditional fixed-wing aircraft like fighters and bombers, to low-altitude cruise missiles, swarms of drones, and even hypersonic weapons, pooling resources for air defense makes more sense than pursuing an independent approach. This holds true from both a strategic and economic standpoint, particularly when confronting a common enemy with a potentially larger force. So here's the deal. All electronic devices generate heat. It's just a natural byproduct of electrical current flowing through them. Now, when it comes to smaller devices like your trusty cell phone, they use passive cooling methods. That means that heat generated by the processor is dissipated using thermal interface materials, and the phone's casing, acting as a heatsink, works like a charm for low-power devices. But when we step into the world of high-performance electronics, like PCs and even fighter jets, things get a little more intense. You see, these power-hungry machines need serious cooling solutions to keep their electronics from overheating. PCs rely on cooling fans to circulate air and keep the components cool, and some high-end ones even use liquid cooling systems. But let's talk about fighter jets. These bad boys are packed with advanced electronic systems, especially 4th and 5th generation aircraft. Now, 5th generation fighters, like the mighty F-35, are essentially flying data centers. They process an incredible amount of information to deliver sensor fusion, which is crucial for their operations. So you can imagine the cooling requirements for these electronic systems are through the roof. To tackle this challenge, jet engines play a vital role. They extract compressed air and pass it through heat exchangers to transfer heat away from the electronics. This diverted airflow is known as bleed air and is an essential component of jet engine design, especially for 5th generation fighters like the F-35. Now let's talk upgrades. The F-35, designed to serve well into the 2070s, is constantly undergoing enhancements bundled in what we call blocks. We've had blocks 1, 2, and 3 so far, but the latest and greatest is Block 4. Block 4 brings a ton of improvements, including significantly more computing power, processing power, and memory as compared to its predecessors. These advanced electronics are going to need even more cooling capability, and this is where the engine comes in. The original spec for the Lightning's F-135 engine allocated 15 kilowatts of bleed air extraction to support cooling requirements. Pratt & Whitney designed the F-135 engine to this spec and built in an extra margin for future growth. But the cooling requirements have increased significantly since then. In fact, the F-35's Joint Program Office, or JPO, which oversees development and sustainment of the fighter for the US and its allies, has stated that the cooling capacity of the current engine is wholly inadequate to support the Block 4 package. On top of this, a Block 5 package is already being designed, and estimates show that the cooling demands for this upgrade will be 20 or 30% more than what Block 4 requires. Even for Block 3 Lightnings, the engines have had to run hotter for longer periods than intended, which has resulted in higher maintenance costs and reduced lifespans of the engines. In response, Pratt & Whitney, the company behind the F-135 engine, has come up with a solution: the Engine Core Upgrade, or ECU. These upgrades can be applied to existing and future-built F-135 engines, which power all three of the F-35 variants: the Air Force's A model, the Marine Stovall B model, and the Navy's carrier-based C model. More on that later. Pratt & Whitney's ECU is intended to work alongside additional power and thermal management upgrades, or PTMS. But wait, there's more. Collins Aerospace, a division of Raytheon, which is the parent company of Pratt & Whitney, is also developing an enhanced cooling power and cooling system called EPACS. When combined with the ECU and PTMS upgrades, they're confident the F-35 will have a whopping 80 kilowatts of cooling power, more than enough to meet the cooling demands for the lifetime of the F-35 program, including Block 5 upgrades and beyond. However, here's where things get interesting. The Air Force has been exploring new engine options for the F-35 under the Adaptive Engine Transition Program, or AETP. These next-generation engines are designed to dynamically switch between high-performance and high-efficiency modes depending on operational circumstances, hence the term adaptive engine. General Electric has their prototype, the XA100, while Pratt & Whitney have their version, the XA101. These adaptive engines could potentially boost the F-35's speed by 20% and increase its range by 30%. Plus, they offer double the thermal management capabilities. Talk about a power-packed upgrade. While the adaptive engine seems like a good fit for the Lightning, there are some significant challenges to consider. For starters, the F-35 fleet would now have to maintain two different engine designs from two different manufacturers, making maintenance and sourcing of parts difficult to say the least. Additionally, the XA100 and XA101 were designed to fit inside the Air Force's F-35A variant, and while it could also likely fit inside the Navy's F-35C variant, the short takeoff and vertical landing, or STOVL, F-35B variant that the Marine Corps uses would likely need significant modifications. There's even some doubt as to whether an adaptive engine could fit in the F-35B at all, so you're faced with an additional layer of maintenance and support, not to mention the cooling issues already faced by the current engines. On top of this, if an adaptive engine cannot be designed for the B model, then you may be stuck at Block 3 for the lifetime of the STOVL version. Still, the GE XA100 creates an engine competition for the F-35 just as it is entering what many see as the midpoint of its production run. With several NATO countries recently selecting the F-35 as their fighter, coupled with over 900 examples built and counting, the F-35 production line has many years left in producing new models, let alone ongoing support. There is little doubt that the GE or even Pratt & Whitney adaptive engine would be beneficial to the F-35. But the upfront costs and ongoing maintenance challenges associated with the adaptive engines may not outweigh the additional improvements they offer. So for now, it seems Congress is leaning towards Pratt & Whitney's ECU upgrades for the existing F-135 engines. According to Raytheon, these upgrades will cost around $2 billion, but will save a whopping $40 billion over the F-35 program's lifetime. That's some serious bang for the buck. This does not mean that the adaptive engine program is dead, however. It is very likely that these next-generation engines will be used in the next-generation air dominance or NGAD fighter. In fact, the Air Force has stated that it plans to leverage findings from its ATP efforts into the next-generation adaptive propulsion or NGAP program. Interestingly, the Air Force seems to be leveraging NGAP to help expand the US's jet engine industrial base beyond the two current players, Pratt & Whitney and GE. In fact, NGAP contracts have also been awarded to Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and Boeing, all of which have not been historically involved in jet engine manufacturing. So it does seem like the Air Force is aiming to diversify and expand the US jet engine industrial base. Alright guys, we've covered a lot today, but it's all about keeping you up to date with the latest developments in the world of fighter jets. The Block 4 version of the F-35 is going to be a game changer, and it'll keep pushing the boundaries of 5th generation fighter design until Block 5 hits the scene. Recently, Australia made a significant and somewhat surprising decision to cancel its order for 28 more F-35s. Let's take a look at how this decision impacts the military picture in the Pacific, what it means for the United States, and how the West can maintain its edge in the region. Before we delve into the implications of Australia's decision, let's take a moment to understand why the F-35 is such a special aircraft. A 5th generation multi-role fighter, the F-35 Lightning combines advanced stealth capabilities, superior situational awareness, and unmatched lethality. Its ability to operate in various roles such as air-to-air combat, air-to-ground strikes, and the often overlooked intelligence gathering makes it a crucial asset in modern warfare. More than an aircraft, the F-35 is an airborne combat information node, coordinating allied assets like a quarterback in the sky. These abilities make the F-35 a unique aircraft, but such complexity comes with its share of growing pains. More on that later. Getting back to the order cancellation, Australia already operates 3 F-35 squadrons. While this may seem to be sufficient numbers, here are some concerns. For starters, the 28 additional Lightnings were slated to replace the Royal Australian Air Force, or RAAF's, sole remaining squadron of F-18 Super Hornets. Instead, Australia will continue to fly their last batch of F-18s for another decade or so, into the mid to late 2030s. This raises the question as to how much time can be squeezed out of the remaining Super Hornet airframes. And interestingly, there is a plan. Australia is looking to perform a midlife update on their F-18s and raise them to the Block 3 standard. Block 3 Super Hornets are effectively 4th plus generation fighters, which include upgrades such as enhanced mission computers and sensors, a reduced radar cross-section or RCS that should improve survivability, along with a projected 10,000 hours service life. With these upgrades, the RAAF Super Hornets should be able to serve comfortably into the next decade. Additionally, the timing of the decision to keep the Super Hornet is interesting, as Boeing's production of new F-18 airframes is set to shut down in 2024. We're very much approaching the end of an era. One last note about the Super Hornet. Back in 2007, it was an interim replacement for the long-range F-111 Aardvark, affectionately known as the Pig. Australia's decision to keep their Super Hornets flying begins to make more sense when you also consider the recent issues the Lightning program is undergoing. Specifically, the Technology Refresh 3 or TR3 upgrades have encountered software problems which have led to delays. As a result, the Pentagon has stated that it would only accept new F-35s with TR3 once all upgrades are completely ready. It's not a stretch to say that these delays also impacted the RAAF decision to forego their last batch of Lightnings. These delays have also impacted the total number of F-35s to be produced this year, from a planned 153 down to around 120 jets. Furthermore, the planned Block 4 upgrades will place even greater demands on the F-35's software and engine. In the case of the engine, additional cooling capacity will be needed to power the advanced electronic systems. Pratt & Whitney, the F-35's engine manufacturer, has come up with an Engine Core Upgrade or ECU, which is intended as a solution for all existing and yet to be built Lightnings. The only issue here is that these ECU modifications will take time to implement and could further delay Block 4 upgrades from coming online. Along with this, China's rapid uptake in the production of its J-20 Mighty Dragon stealth fighters is cause for additional concern. There is some debate as to whether the J-20 is truly a 5th generation fighter, but in any case, it is an advanced aircraft that should be seen as a serious threat, especially in numbers. J-20 production is projected to be 120 units this year. Without a doubt, China is bolstering its air power and challenging the balance of military power in the Pacific. The F-35 still enjoys a global numerical advantage over the J-20, with over 900 examples built and counting. But it is concerning that the J-20 will see as many new units built as the F-35 does this year. Additionally, unlike the Lightning fleet, which is stationed all over the world, J-20s are concentrated in the Western Pacific. Fortunately, the F-35 is not the only aircraft representing the West in the Pacific. The US Air Force operates F-15s and F-16s in the region, as well as 5th generation F-22 Raptors. The UK's Royal Navy and Royal Air Force can also bring assets into theater, including F-35Bs and Eurofighter Typhoons. Then there is the Quad Alliance, which consists of the United States, Australia, India, and Japan, which has the potential to serve as a counterbalance to China's growing influence in the region. Strengthening cooperation and coordination among these nations can help maintain stability and security. And speaking of F-35s, Japan has over 140 F-35s, consisting of about 105 A models and about 40 short takeoff and vertical landing B models. These numbers give Japan the most F-35s of any international customer. Interestingly, India recently selected the Dassault Rafale over the Super Hornet in their latest fighter competition. The Rafale is another excellent aircraft that can help maintain the balance of power in the Pacific. Another promising development lies in the Australian, UK, and US Trilateral Security Pact, better known as AUKUS. Initially designed to assist Australia in obtaining nuclear-powered submarines, the pact has been expanded for the three nations to work together in the Indo-Pacific region to develop wider technologies. When it comes to fighter planes, this could eventually include the Next Generation Air Dominance or NGAD 6th generation fighter. There are some who think the NGAD is already flying, and it could be in production by the mid-2030s, which is when the RAAF Super Hornets are intended to serve until. It's worth pointing out that Australia is very comfortable and happy with their 3 squadrons of the F-35s, so perhaps this decision is a game of hedging bets in order to be in a position to acquire the NGAD as soon as it is available. Additionally, Australia has been making strides in unmanned aircraft, especially in the form of the Loya Wingman program, a fighter-sized, low-cost, attritable drone that could become a progenitor to the US Air Force's Skyborg program. These drones and initiatives could be implemented by the RAAF to serve as a force multiplier, which would result in the need for fewer manned fighters. While initially Australia cancelling their last batch of F-35s seems alarming, when you combine all the aforementioned factors, Block 3 Super Hornets, drone aircraft, the AUKUS collaboration, and the NGAD program, it does begin to make more sense. The RAAF is a key player in the balance of power in the Pacific, and together with allied nations, should ensure that remains the case into the foreseeable future. Imagine being asked to design a car that can drive like a race car, go off-road like an SUV, and is as luxurious as a limousine, all while being as affordable as a compact sedan. It's almost an impossible task, right? Similarly, the F-35 Lightning was expected to meet a diverse set of requirements that were sometimes at odds with each other, and still be affordable. That was the plan for the Lightning, yet now it's going to cost $1.7 trillion. So how do we get here? And is this do-everything fighter worth the money? Let's take a look at how the F-35 program dealt with an ever-growing set of requirements, how 3 airframes were designed to fit virtually every mission, why the software code has always been an issue, why things are running hot with the engine, and where all the money went. To understand the full impact of the F-35 program, we'll need to get some perspective as to how much $1.7 trillion is. For starters, if you stacked 1.7 trillion $1 bills, the stack would be approximately 115,380 miles high, which is about halfway to the moon. If you place the same $1 bills end to end, it would measure 164,760,227 miles, or enough to go around the Earth 6,615 times. $1.7 trillion is like stacking the Great Pyramid with gold bricks. But these dollars won't be used for stacking contests or pyramid building, but rather to purchase, maintain, train pilots, crews, and all the associated costs for the F-35. We'll get back to the dollar figures later, but again, is this fighter worth the cost? Ironically, the F-35's goal was to save money. To really understand what the F-35 is set out to do, you have to go all the way back to the 90s. You couldn't get away from purple and teal colors, and more importantly, the Soviet Union had collapsed, ending the Cold War, and the first Gulf War had ended in a resounding victory for the US and the West. The thinking at the time was that since the Cold War was over, it was time to pay the peace dividend. Military budgets were cut, and as a result, the Pentagon wanted to develop a cheaper and more versatile fighter. From this came the F-35, which began its life as the Joint Strike Fighter or JSF program. The program's objective was to build a single airplane that would be stealthy, lightweight, easy to fly, and that could be slightly modified to work for the Navy, Air Force, and Marines. Think of a single car chassis that can be adapted for different models. A good example of this in the car world is Volkswagen's MQB approach, which standardizes many components while allowing for variability in wheelbase, track, and external dimensions. Cars from the VW Golf to the Audi TT are produced using this methodology. Getting back to the JSF program, by the time the requirements were finalized, you had to develop a single family of aircraft that could fly supersonic like an F-16 Viper, sneak past defenses like an F-117 Nighthawk, hover like an AV-8 Harrier, and land on carriers like an F-18 Super Hornet. Consider a family of 3 siblings, a city dweller, a sailor, and a mountain climber. If they all went shopping for shoes, they'd each need something different: city shoes, boat shoes, and climbing boots. Now, instead of buying 3 different pairs, imagine if their parents tried to design one shoe to fit all these purposes. That's akin to the challenge faced in designing 3 variations of the F-35 for very different military environments. These requirements on paper seemed wonderful. With one aircraft family that could perform all of these missions, you'd save money on pilot training, maintenance, while having a pool of common parts that could be sourced and readily available. With so many eggs in the F-35's basket, the stakes had quickly ballooned. On top of this, the JSF program is going to be made available to allies who would also share in the development and manufacturing costs. This seems like a win-win, right? However, while great on paper, these requirements were similar to Kennedy's announcement in the 1960s that the US would put a man on the moon before the decade ended.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
It was a great idea, but initially nobody really knew how to actually make it happen. Looking back on the JSF goals, they weren't just naive, they may have been the program's first major problem. These goals ended up being so complicated and ever-shifting, it became akin to assembling a million-piece jigsaw puzzle without the picture on the box. Sure, you could do it, but it would take a ton of time and you wouldn't know what you had until you were almost done. After an intense competition with Boeing, who submitted their interesting-looking X-32 design, in 2001, Lockheed Martin won with their X-35 concept. Lockheed seemed to be a great fit, having designed the world's first stealth fighter, the F-117 Nighthawk, as well as the world's first 5th-generation fighter, the F-22 Raptor. But how could they pull all of this off? It sounds impossible, right? Well, in order to meet the needs of the Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps, Lockheed developed 3 variants of the F-35, known as the A, B, and C models. The F-35A can perhaps be considered the base model. Intended for the Air Force, it features an internal 25mm cannon, along with an internal weapons bay. When Lockheed got to the Marines B model, the stakes were raised even higher. The B variant had to perform short takeoff and vertical landing, or STOVL, in the same way that the famed Harrier jump jet does. The challenge was to design a lifting system that could be tucked away to retain stealth and level flight. Enter an unlikely partnership. In 1991, as the Soviet Union was collapsing, Soviet then Russian aircraft manufacturer Yakovlev was developing their Yak-141, which was an advanced version of the apology for a fighter, the Yak-38. Seriously, the Yak-38 was outperformed in just about every category by its rival, the British Harrier. Anyway, the newer 141 model was to contain many improvements, but again, due to the fall of the Soviet Union, Yakovlev was left looking for a partner to finance the last legs of their research efforts. Enter Lockheed. In late 1991, the aerospace giant entered into a secret partnership with Yakovlev to get them to the finish line. $400 million later, 3 prototypes and a static test aircraft were built. Although none of these newer aircraft flew, Lockheed had what they needed to proceed with their F-35B version. The third and final version of the F-35 is of course the C model, and it is designed for catapult-assisted takeoff but arrested recovery or CATOBAR operations, what you and I would refer to as carrier ops for the Navy. The C model features larger wings, folding wings, and of course a tail hook along with a tow bar in the nose wheel that attaches to the catapult. There were many growing pains for the airframe designs, and then the F-35 would face its darkest moment. Things got worse. By the early 2000s, Russia was flying and exporting their 4th generation Su-35, an advanced version of their MiG-29, while China's J-10 Vigorous Dragon was also taking to the skies. To make matters even more tense, both Russia and China were also developing their own 5th generation stealth fighters, Russia with the Su-57 Felon and China with a J-20 Mighty Dragon. Then, the F-22 decision happened. In 2011, the Raptor program was cancelled, with just 186 of the 700 planned jets built. The political thought process at the time was that such a high-end fighter like the Raptor wasn't needed. The F-35 was now America's only new fighter program. The Lightning now had to be better than anything in the sky today and for decades to come. The stakes could not have been any higher. Under this enormous pressure, the Pentagon decided to proceed with what has become the 2 dirtiest words in aviation: concurrent development. This is a process where you begin producing a new aircraft and then go back and make changes as you find issues that need to be addressed. That's like moving into your new house as it's being built. Concurrent development would go on to especially rear its ugly head in one major component that affected all 3 F-35 variants from day one: the code. Think of the most complicated and detailed video game you've ever played. The game's world is vast with many characters, intricate graphics, and complex physics. Now imagine if every time you played there were glitches that made the game crash or made characters behave unpredictably. The F-35 software was like that video game, but on a much larger and crucial scale, controlling a multi-million-dollar machine in real-world situations. The tiniest bug could have catastrophic consequences. Aside from stealth, one of the F-35's major advantages is sensor fusion. The ability to take information from various sensors and even other platforms and merge them into a picture that the pilot can digest and act on quickly. To do this, the F-35 software uses several million lines of code to operate. And like all software projects, the code was full of bugs and required constant rewriting. In some ways, this is an ongoing issue with the program today. Along with getting the initial code to work, the F-35 software is constantly being upgraded to accept new weapon systems, updates in avionics, and flight profiles. The latest F-35 upgrade, known as Technology Refresh 3 or TR3, improves the jet's displays, memory, and computer processing power, and is a cornerstone for the next evolutionary leap in the fighter's digital architecture, which is going to be known as Block 4. However, there are a couple of obstacles that are getting in the way of Block 4. The first is due to software issues with TR3, to the point that this year's F-35's deliveries will be lower than expected. The second issue has to do with the F-35's engine. It's running too hot. In order for all of the F-35's electronic systems to function properly, the engine has to provide enormous amounts of cooling capability to the electronics. Ever used a laptop for an extended period and felt it getting hotter and hotter? Electronics, especially powerful ones, generate a lot of heat. If the laptop gets too hot, it'll slow down or shut off to protect itself. Now consider the F-35's electronics, which are immensely more powerful and intricate than a laptop. Without proper cooling, these systems risk failing in mid-flight, which is far more dangerous than a laptop shutting down on your desk. The current engine, Pratt & Whitney's F135 series, which powers all 3 variants, has been running over capacity and has not been able to deliver the cooling needs of TR3, let alone Block 4. There are some workarounds in place, more on that later. With all of these issues and the stakes constantly being raised for this ambitious program, we return to our initial question: is this jet worth $1.7 trillion? The reality is that the F-35 is not a concept, but rather it's a tangible aircraft. A concept can be neatly filed as right or wrong, while real aircraft are not so easily organized. Without a doubt, every generational leap in technology has faced setbacks and delays. Some of you will remember the early days of the F-16 Fighting Falcon, when it had all kinds of issues, which led it to be referred to as the lawn dart during its development. The F-16 pioneered fly-by-wire controls, where the pilot's inputs were processed by a computer, which would then move the control surfaces accordingly. Today, virtually every fighter jet and most airlines use fly-by-wire controls, and nobody worries about them. The F-16 would go on to become the most produced fourth-generation fighter in the West. Interestingly, the F-16 was and is produced by Lockheed, who of course is now making the F-35, so they've been down this road before. Tactically speaking, in modern military exercises, the Lightning routinely achieves a 20-to-1 kill ratio while performing strike and reconnaissance missions more effectively than other fighters. Pilots who have flown both 4th-generation fighters and the F-35 say they would never go back to 4th gen. The F-35's sensor fusion allows the pilot to decide on what to do versus trying to operate various multifunction displays. It's like typing a research paper with a word processor versus a typewriter. Which would you rather use? Then there are the numbers. They simply don't lie. With over 960 aircraft delivered, it easily outproduces most modern aircraft that are still in production, especially for a 5th-generation fighter. We mentioned the F-22. While that program was cut off at 186 units produced, the goal was only ever going to be about 700 airframes. Russia's Su-57 may have as few as 5 aircraft that are airworthy, and the Su-75 Checkmate that was announced 2 years ago, as a competitor to the F-35 by the way, is still a wooden mock-up. It's doubtful at this point if the Checkmate will ever fly, given the almost 2 years of sanctions imposed on Russia following their invasion of Ukraine. Meanwhile, China's J-20 Mighty Dragon is seen by many as a 4th plus and not a 5th-generation fighter. It only has about 200 airframes built as of the making of this video. Then, there is the increasing number of partner nations and customers. Germany, Canada, Finland, and Switzerland have all pulled the trigger on the F-35 in the last year alone. Each of those nations held intense fighter competitions and reviewed all of their options before choosing the Lightning. Despite all the negative press and challenges, the reality is that the F-35 is no longer facing major development or production issues as it did in the early 2000s. Today, the Lightning is a game-changing fighter which can defeat any tactical aircraft in the world, and America's allies are lining up to purchase the jet. So to answer the question, is the Lightning worth $1.7 trillion? Yes, it is. Here's why. While that number seems staggering at first, consider that this is the sum of all costs for the program's operational lifetime, which will run through 2070. Furthermore, when you're talking about defense spending, while $1.7 trillion is a lot of money, the US Department of Defense budget is over $800 billion this year. The F-35 Lightning is the most controversial and expensive weapons program in history. A fighter which had to replace several legendary airframes, it has been asked to do everything. However, during its long development cycle, the Lightning has been plagued by cost overruns, delays, and unforeseen requirements since its beginnings as the Joint Strike Fighter in the 90s. But what if there's a twist in this high-stakes tale? What if a groundbreaking innovation could transform the F-35 from a symbol of costly ambition to a beacon of military efficiency and power? Let's take a look at some collaborative combat aircraft, or CCAs, that could turn the Lightning into a force multiplier to make the jet cost-effective, and why it's the next step in the NGAD program. Today, the Air Force is looking to add at least 1,000 CCAs to its inventory. These autonomous or drone aircraft will work closely together with crewed combat jets like the F-35 Lightning, B-21 Raider, and the NGAD fighter. If you recall, NGAD stands for Next Generation Air Dominance. And along with building a 6th-generation fighter, autonomous drones like the CCAs are also a part of the NGAD initiative. Financially, the need for drones that can team up with crewed jets makes sense. Today, the F-35A Lightning is about $80 million a copy, while the NGAD fighter and B-21 Raider are slated to cost over $100 million each. Not to mention the time and cost it takes to train a pilot to fly these airframes. More on that later. The CCA solution is an attempt to create what the Air Force calls an affordable mass. This does not mean that the drones are throwaway or expendable, rather that they could incur acceptable losses and still allow the USAF to complete its mission. The idea here is that CCA drones would cost about 1/4 the price of an F-35 Lightning. The CCA program is looking to add at least 1,000 advanced drones, which have high degrees of autonomy to fly missions in a high-end fight against an opponent like China. Broadly speaking, these drones would fly with or ahead of crewed fighters, while having useful range and payload capabilities. Diving deeper into the requirements of these CCAs. The drones can be configured as mission specialists, meaning that some drones could be loaded out as weapons platforms, sort of like a missile truck, carrying and delivering munitions to amplify the striking capability of the crewed aircraft it's accompanying. Other drones would be outfitted to carry advanced sensors or jamming equipment and forego weapons. One example could be a drone carrying a powerful air-to-ground radar to assist in precision strikes. By using a data link, this could allow the crewed aircraft to keep its radar turned off and avoid detection. The problem that this then presents to an enemy is that they have to treat and prosecute every drone as if it's armed. Another configuration could be decoy drones that jam enemy radar or intentionally get detected to divert hostile aircraft away from the mission aircraft. These specialized or modular drones should not take as much time to develop as manned fighters. Since they are uncrewed, you don't need to worry about life support systems or G limits that a pilot can endure. You can build a drone that can withstand 15 Gs, then it can fly those maneuvers as soon as it learns to do so. Speaking of training, this is one area where drones simply outmatch crewed aircraft. It takes several years to train a pilot to fly a high-performance fighter, and then further years to get them to become experts in the tactics used to employ their jet to their maximum performance. Essentially, one human pilot can learn from their own missions flown and to some extent from the teachings of others. But a drone can learn every lesson that has been flown by every drone before it 100%. This is because drones learn via a process known as artificially trained neural networks. To do this, the best real-world pilots fly missions in simulators where data is recorded and sent to the drones to learn. Think of the most challenging missions flown in Desert Storm or Kosovo, and then have the best pilots fly it in a sim. In the span of 24 hours, a drone could fly those mission scenarios several million times, where that same scenario has only ever happened once or twice in reality. The learning process is already underway with highly modified crewed aircraft. One aircraft that is helping drive this initiative is a highly modified F-16 known as the Vista. This jet has up to 2 human pilots on board, but also contains the AI systems that a drone needs to fly. The pilots take off in the Vista, fly to the mission area, and then drone software takes over to fly the mission. During the mission, the pilots are there to monitor the flight and take over in case parameters are exceeded. Today, the Vista is flying in exercises alongside 5th generation F-22 Raptors and F-35 Lightnings to further improve its algorithms. When you consider all these factors, it is clear to see that CCA drones provide a distinct advantage. Given that the F-35 is essentially a flying combat information node, Adding these drones to the Lightning's arsenal will cause it to be a force multiplier at a much lower cost and risk to pilots than a force of just F-35s. What's interesting is the initial 1,000 drone figure requested by the Air Force. This sends a clear message to industry that AI, along with drones, are here to stay and could mark a turning point in the USAF's crewed versus uncrewed fighter ratio. Indeed, it looks like the 1,000 units figure is just a starting point, with sophisticated and cost-effective drones being less than 5 years away from deployment. In the vast expanse of the ocean, aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, a Navy F-35C Lightning shines unusually under the sun. Its chrome or mirror-like coating catches the eye, sparking a whirl of questions. What is the purpose of this striking finish? No, it's not extraterrestrial technology, but something equally intriguing. We've seen similar coatings on the F-35s belonging to the VX-9 Vampires, a squadron that's known for testing. But this Lightning belongs to VFA 125, the Rough Raiders, a fleet replenishment squadron, renowned for their relentless operational pace on carriers. This suggests a new phase, transitioning these experimental coatings from testbeds to durable operational realities. Could this be the dawn of a new era for the Lightning fleet and stealth, where sleek aesthetics meet rugged carrier demands? Engage that like and subscribe button, and let's take a look at the Lightning's counterintuitive mirror skin that could be the latest in stealth technology. Stealth is all about being unseen and staying hidden. Like an ambush predator, you won't know it's there until it's too late. The F-22 Raptor, F-35 Lightning, and even the fabled F-117 Nighthawk all make use of low, observable technology to do this. In the case of the Nighthawk, Saddam Hussein's armed forces found out firsthand what it was like to be taken by surprise during the first Gulf War. The Nighthawk is covered in radar-absorbing materials or RAM coatings and has a shape that does not allow radar waves to return to the radar. These coatings were also essentially a black color, and since the F-117 flew its missions primarily at night, it was termed the Nighthawk. The next breakthrough came with the F-22 Raptor, which is a day or night stealth aircraft. The next step in that evolution was of course the F-35 Lightning, which had improved methods for applying and keeping precious RAM coatings on its skin. These stealth aircraft have all been configured to be low observable by radar and low visibility. But now it appears things have changed. Recently, all three aircraft have been spotted with chrome or mirror-like coatings, seeming to go against everything we've learned about stealth technology. The reason for this could be in the advancements made by passive systems known as Infrared Search and Track or IRST. These systems, such as those found on the Russian Su-27 flanker, do not rely on radar waves to detect and track an aircraft, but rather small telescopes and infrared cameras that visually can see a target. With IRST, if you can see them, you can engage it. Warfare is an eternal chess game, a game of cat and mouse, of move and counter-move. And while stealth is still highly effective, these advancements in IRST systems are presenting more of a threat to 5th generation aircraft. What we are seeing in these new mirror-like coatings could very well be a counter to IRST, a way for them to visually blend into their surroundings, making them virtually invisible. Getting back to sci-fi alien technology for a second, this is somewhat similar to how a fictional alien predator hunted in plain sight in a movie made famous by the line, "Get to the chopper!" The fact that we are seeing these mirror coatings on an F-35, which is performing takeoffs and landings on a carrier, tells us that we've entered the next stage in testing this new technology. Carrier operations at sea expose aircraft to some of the most unforgiving environments, especially corrosive salt water. While a fleet replenishment squadron like VFA 125 is not a frontline squadron, it is used extensively aboard carriers and is the next best thing to a forward deployed squadron. Basically, we can think of this as an in-between step to getting those chrome or mirror-like coatings onto operational squadrons. Then there's the NGAD testing. The Navy is working on their own version of the Next Generation Air Dominance or NGAD fighter, which they have termed FA-XX. These F-35s that are being tested with newer coatings are most certainly testing technologies for the FA-XX. Overall, these highly reflective skins are part of a way to counter those IRST systems and fall under the umbrella of what we now call spectral warfare. Remember that since IRST systems are passive, they are basically immune to traditional radar jamming methods used in electronic warfare. Also, an IRST system that detects an aircraft will not alert the target aircraft. You can now see why in the modern battle space that is full of stealthy fighters and bombers, spectral warfare becomes such a big deal. When you think about it, it's actually a fascinating twist of aviation history. We find ourselves revisiting an old practice with a new perspective. These super advanced 5th and 6th generation fighter jets, adorned with chrome-like surfaces, are in a way a nod to an era long past. During World War II, many Allied aircraft were left in their raw metallic finishes, not just for practicality, but also as a bold statement of presence in the skies. This concept traces even further back to World War I, where the famous Flying Circus Squadron, led by the legendary Red Baron, famously painted their aircraft in vivid, eye-catching colors to taunt and challenge their adversaries to aerial duels. This historical concept adds depth to our understanding of modern warfare strategies. We've transitioned from the deliberate visibility of bright colors and reflective surfaces, once used to provoke and engage in direct combat, to employing mirror-like coatings for exactly the opposite reason: to remain unseen for as long as possible. This evolution in military aircraft aesthetics reflects really a broader shift in aerial combat philosophy. Where once the goal was to be seen and to confront the enemy head-on, today's approach prioritizes stealth and surprise, just like an ambush predator. These mirror-like coatings on contemporary jets are not just about aesthetics, they are a strategic choice, enhancing an aircraft's ability to blend into its environment, reducing detection by enemy radar and IRST systems, which gives them a critical advantage in modern warfare. So at the end of the day, what might seem like a simple design choice is in fact a sophisticated blend of history, technology, and strategy, encapsulating the ever-evolving nature of military aviation. Getting back to the Navy's FA-XX program, I recently made a video using this concept model, which features canards. Many of you commented that the use of canards was not a good design choice and would not be featured in the final design. Maybe so. You can check out the video here, and there will also be a link in the description below. Let me know what you think. Regarding the Air Force's NGAD, I just finished a video with a model based on Lockheed's design. You can also check out that video as well. The chrome coatings that are being tested on the F-35 Lightning, the F-22 Raptor, and the F-117 Nighthawk are an indication that we will see these on 6th generation aircraft. In the vast, unforgiving skies of the Mojave Desert, something strange is happening. 2 fighter jets, one polished like a mirror, the other blacked out like a shadow, have been spotted dancing above China Lake. One is a stealthy 5th gen F-35C, but not like any we've seen before. This one gleams, literally. Its chrome-coated skin reflects the desert sun like a disco ball at 35,000 feet. The other, a jet black FA-18 Super Hornet, an icon, a proven veteran with plenty of fight still left, bearing the unmistakable markings of something far more secretive. These aren't your standard Navy jets. These are vampires. And no, that's not just a nickname. The unit behind these aircraft, VX-9, has a reputation. Silent, experimental, and always one step ahead of what we think is possible in modern air combat. But here's the question that's left even seasoned aviation watchers scratching their heads. Why would the US Navy deliberately strip away the stealth coating on its premier fighter and replace it with something that screams, "Look at me"? Is this chrome skin a clever trick, built to confuse heat-seeking sensors and optical trackers? Or is it hiding something even more advanced? A next-gen material, a sensor array, maybe a preview of the elusive 6th generation F-47. But while that mysterious future still lies on the horizon, something else is happening right now. The F-35 is being transformed. A massive Block 4 upgrade is rolling out, and it's set to redefine what this jet can actually do in combat. And VX9, they're not just testing these upgrades, they're pushing the envelope, launching SM-6 missiles from Vandy 1, rewriting what we thought a Super Hornet was capable of. Today, you're getting a special doubleheader. We're diving deep into the classified world of naval flight testing, shadowy aircraft, next-gen warfare tech, and a look at one of the most storied squadrons in the Navy. You see, this isn't just a story about stealth fighters. This is the front line of the future. Let's dive into it right now. PilotPhotog.com. Let's begin with the Lightning's biggest overhaul yet, known as Block 4. The F-35, like many fighters, is updated in batches called blocks. The current Lightnings are Block 3, with Block 4 upgrades scheduled for installation this year. Block 4 will add a ton of new features, including improved target recognition software and increased missile capacity. That's right, Lightnings will be able to carry even more missiles. And before you say external hardpoints ruin stealth, well, it looks like these F-35s will be able to fit 6 AMRAAMs internally instead of 4. Now, most people think of stealth as simply staying hidden from radar, but few people realize that electronic warfare, or EW, is equally crucial. And when it comes to EW capabilities, the F-35 is essentially a flying data center, and it stands nearly unmatched in the EW department. Now, Block 4 will introduce major upgrades that will put it far ahead of any current aircraft. For instance, Block 4 is going to include enhanced radio frequency, or RF, sensors that will allow the Lightning to detect, classify, and analyze enemy radars at greater ranges and with better resolution. More on that in a minute. Along with identifying and analyzing those radars, Block 4 Lightnings will add more advanced digital radio frequency memory, or DRFM, jamming. The interesting thing is that DRFM is going to allow the Lightning to replicate and manipulate enemy radar signals. Can you see where this is going? Hang on and I'll give you a scenario in just a minute. Block 4 is also going to give the F-35 upgraded cyber warfare and networking capabilities. This will allow the Lightning to share that precious EW data with other aircraft and ground stations in real time. This effectively makes the Lightning the eyes and ears of the fleet or the force. But it doesn't stop there. Along with detecting, analyzing, and manipulating enemy radar, the upgraded Lightnings will also be able to perform jamming attacks on enemy installations, without using any external jamming pods, so that its stealth remains preserved. Alright, here's the scenario that I mentioned earlier. Imagine an F-35 on a deep penetration strike mission into highly contested airspace that's being guarded by an S-400 missile defense system. The S-400 is on alert and scanning for intruders. The F-35's onboard AN/ASQ Barracuda system detects the radar long before the enemy even sees the F-35. The Lightning's onboard systems analyze the S-400's output and uses its DRFM jamming to send back a false signal. This tricks the S-400 into thinking the jet is somewhere it is not, or that there's nothing there at all. So now you have a radar operator that is confused and misled. This plays exactly into the Lightning's hands. If for some reason the enemy tries to launch a missile, the F-35 can then disrupt the missile's guidance system with an electronic cyber attack directed at that missile. With these Block 4 upgrades, the F-35 easily becomes one of the most survivable aircraft in contested airspace. And it can simply operate in areas that legacy aircraft would simply struggle. Now, just like your gaming PC, in order to get these performance enhancements, you're going to have to do some hardware upgrades first. For the Lightning's Block 4 to happen, it first has to go through Technology Refresh 3 or TR3. The military sure loves their acronyms, don't they? TR3 will add a new integrated core processor along with an enhanced panoramic cockpit display, a larger memory unit, and other classified capabilities. Now, it's safe to say that much of the TR3 and Block 4 testing is being done at the crews over at VX9, and we'll get to them in a minute. But what about that chrome coating? Well, as far as we can tell, that's not part of Block 4. It looks to be an experiment encountering infrared search and track or IRST sensors. These sensors use telescopes and IR cameras to visually find and track an object, in this case a fighter. Now, so far, all the detection systems we've been talking about have been based on electronic emissions such as radio waves, or better known as radar. As we've seen, those signals can be analyzed and jammed. The challenge with IRST is that it's a passive system, meaning they don't give off any emissions, so you can't jam them. Now, increasingly, IRST is becoming more and more of a threat to stealth aircraft. And quick side note, IRST is so important that the F-35 has its own onboard system. It's mounted under the nose in a sapphire enclosing. On the Lightning, this is known as EOTS, or Electro-Optical Targeting System. The EOTS is an upgrade to the Sniper Advanced Targeting Pod, but instead of a stealth-canceling external pod, EOTS is built into the jet. Now, what makes the EOTS special is that it combines the infrared scanning of an IRST along with the Lightning's other onboard systems like the ASA radar and the Distributed Aperture System, or DAS. This helps the Lightning build a complete threat picture. So at the end of the day, the Lightning's EOTS is more than just an IRST. This allows the Lightning to track targets in multiple spectrums at the same time. Alright, now let's get back to the enemy IRST systems and why they're dangerous to stealth fighters. Again, since they're passive and can't be jammed, your next best defense is to go invisible. And this is likely what the mirror coating is. Think of it as an adaptive camouflage that reflects the surroundings to blend in. Getting back to the upgrades, in order to power all these advanced systems, the F-35 is going to need two things: more electricity and more cooling, both of which come from the aircraft's engine. To solve this problem, General Electric and Pratt & Whitney submitted a proposal for an engine upgrade competition. Pratt & Whitney proposed upgrading their existing F-135 engine, while GE proposed a new adaptive cycle engine. After an extensive review, the DoD has settled on upgrading the existing Pratt & Whitney F-135 engine, and that comes in the form of the Enhanced Engine Package, or EEP. Yep, another acronym. The EEP will give the F-35's engine 10% more thrust, 50% better thermal management or cooling, and 25% more fuel efficiency, which will increase the Lightning's range or loiter time. And speaking of enhancements, we are almost at the point where we're going to talk about VX9 and that famous Fan D1. But first, as you can imagine, with all these upgrades, the F-35 will be packed to the gills with advanced sensors and cyber warfare technologies to protect it against enemy threats. But unlike military jets equipped with all those sophisticated countermeasures, your personal information online is wide open and vulnerable, unless you do something to protect it. If you've ever been hit with non-stop robocalls, sketchy emails, or junk email that knows way too much about you, well, that's not a coincidence. Your personal info is probably floating around the internet, thanks to data brokers. These companies collect your data and sell it. Names, addresses, phone numbers, even info about your relatives. In the wrong hands, that kind of access opens the door to scams, ID theft, and privacy violations you might never see coming. Incogni is a service that fights back. It works behind the scenes to contact data brokers, demand removal of your information, and monitor to make sure it doesn't come back. Hit the link in the description and use my code PilotPhotog to get 60% off your annual Incogni plan. It's time to stop leaving your data exposed and start protecting what matters most online, your digital footprint. Alright, now let's turn our attention to the legendary squadron behind these groundbreaking tests, the VX-9 Vampires. Before there was VX-9, there were two pioneering squadrons that led the way in testing the Navy's latest aviation technologies. Those were VX-4 and VX-5. Maybe you can see where the 9's coming from already. Starting with VX-4, they were known as the Evaluators, and they were established just after World War II at Naval Air Station Point Mugu in California. For nearly 5 decades, VX-4 was instrumental in air-to-air combat innovation. They meticulously evaluated cutting-edge fighter tactics and weapons systems. The squadron famously tested some iconic missiles such as the AIM-7 Sparrow, the AIM-9 Sidewinder, and of course, the long-range AIM-54 Phoenix missile for the F-14 Tomcat. Now, VX-4 didn't just test missiles, they revolutionized dogfighting tactics, perfected aerial intercept methods, and played a critical role in refining fleet-wide combat readiness during the Cold War. Meanwhile, VX-5, known as the Vampires, specialized in air-to-ground warfare. They were based primarily at Naval Air Station China Lake, California. VX-5 rigorously evaluated and integrated new strike weapons, guided bombs, and sophisticated targeting pods into the Navy's inventory. To do this, VX-5 would conduct countless live fire tests and evaluations. And they played a vital role in developing precision-guided munitions and pioneering ground attack strategies and tactics. Their meticulous approach greatly enhanced the accuracy and effectiveness of carrier-based strike aircraft, which forever transformed naval aviation's capability to project power onto enemy shores and beyond. By 1993, with multi-role fighters becoming more prominent and budget cuts to pay the peace dividend, the Navy recognized the increased overlap between air-to-air and air-to-ground warfare, and decided to merge VX-4 and VX-5 into a single integrated unit. So in June of 1993, VX-9, the Vampires, was officially established, bringing together the rich legacies of both squadrons into one elite testing unit. Today, VX-9 operates mainly from Naval Air Weapons Station China Lake, and they continue their tradition of innovation. The Vampires have been entrusted with evaluating cutting-edge technology and weapons for aircraft like, as we've seen, the Chrome F-35 Lightning and the Block 3 Super Hornet. VX-9 ensures that these next-generation systems are thoroughly tested, refined, and combat-ready, giving the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps unmatched dominance in the skies. That chrome-coated F-35C that's been spotted outside of China Lake is just one example of how VX-9 continues to lead the charge, pushing the boundaries of aviation technology and tactical capability. A quick side note, my guess is that VX-9 is testing whatever the FA-XX airplane is going to be. Now, expanding on that legacy of VX-9, the squadron continues to be at the forefront of testing and integrating advanced weaponry to enhance the U.S. Navy's combat capabilities. A great recent example is their involvement in the development and evaluation of the AIM-174B missile, which is an air-launched variant derived from the Standard Missile 6 or SM-6. Now, the SM-6, officially known as the RAM-174 or Standard Extended Range Active Missile (ERAM), was initially developed as a surface-to-air missile for naval ships equipped with the Aegis combat system. The SM-6, mounted on ships, gives extended range protection against fixed and rotary wing aircraft, even drones or unmanned vehicles, and cruise missiles. Recognizing its versatility and potential, the U.S. Navy explored adapting the SM-6 for air launch capabilities, which of course has led us to the development of the AIM-174B. Now check this out. Back in September of 2024, our friends over at VX9 were spotted testing something pretty incredible. Their jet black FA-A-18F Super Hornet, aka Vandy 1, was photographed carrying a heavy air-to-air loadout. This loadout included 4 AIM-174Bs, 3 AIM-120 Advanced Medium Range Air-to-Air Missiles or AMRAAMs, and 2 AIM-9X Sidewinders. Now that's a lot of firepower on one jet. This wasn't just for show, they were pushing the Super Hornet to its limits, seeing just how much punch it could pack. Now some of you might even call that loadout OP, but the question is, why would they do this and what does it matter? Well, here's the cool part. By adding these new AIM-174B missiles to the Super Hornet's arsenal, our Navy fighters can now reach out and touch threats from much further away than ever before. Remember that cagey veteran analogy from earlier in the video? You can think of this configuration as giving our pilots a longer arm in a boxing match. They can land hits while staying safely out of range. And the folks at VX9 are making sure everything works perfectly before these systems go operational. And probably not a moment too soon given everything that's going on in Diego Garcia. So at the end of the day, when it comes to testing new weapon systems, the vampires over at VX9 are really the unsung heroes here. They're the ones making sure our Navy pilots have the absolute best tools for the job, helping keep America's edge in the skies as sharp as ever. And again, with Iran's recent threats to the US base at Diego Garcia, a little extra engagement range could not come at a better time. So let me wrap this up for you in a way that really brings it home. We've covered quite a journey today in this doubleheader. From that mysterious chrome F-35C that's turning heads in the California sky, to those amazing Block 4 upgrades that are basically giving the Lightning superpowers. And how cool is the story of VX9? These vampires came from 2 incredible squadrons, VX4's air-to-air expertise mixed with VX5's ground attack mastery. And they're still out there pushing the boundaries every single day. You know what really gets me excited? The way these test pilots and engineers at VX9 are working on game-changing projects, like that AIM-174B missile. They're not just testing new toys out there, they're making sure our Navy stays miles ahead of everyone else in the sky. Think about it. While other countries are trying to catch up, VX9 is already living in tomorrow's world of stealth tech, electronic warfare, and advanced missiles. It's like they're writing the future of air combat, and with powerhouse platforms like the F-35 Lightning, that future is looking pretty incredible. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. What's your take on that chrome F-35C? Is it really just about beating infrared detection, or is there something else going on? And I'm sure VX9 has plenty of other cutting-edge projects that we don't even know about yet. My guess is the FA-XX is one of them. So after 2 decades of development, countless controversies, and billions spent, the F-35 Lightning is no longer just a program. It's a reality. Flying, fighting, and shaping the skies over the Pacific, Europe, the Middle East, and beyond. Love it or hate it, the F-35 isn't going away. It's redefining what modern air power looks like, for better or for worse. But now, I want to hear from you. Do you think the F-35 will deliver on its full potential, or will it go down as the most ambitious misfire in aviation history? Let me know in the comments. I read every one. If this video gave you something to think about, gave you a new perspective, or just scratch that aviation itch, hit that like button, subscribe, and join the squadron. And as for those who want to go even deeper, behind the scenes breakdowns, early access, and exclusive content, consider joining as a channel member or supporting me on Patreon. You keep the mission flying. Until next time, this is Tog in the clear, and now you know. PilotPhotog.com